Hey, and welcome to the Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal. Boys and girls, my name is Ty Hildenbrandt. That fine gentleman over there, as always, Dan Rubenstein. This episode, all of our episodes driven by our good friends over at Geico. Dan Rubenstein, week 9, officially in the books, sir. How you doing?
Better than Wake Forest second half offense.
Oh, you had to say it. Right out of the chute, you had to say it.
I am here. I don't even think we can talk about the bottom of the ACC as an entity. It's just Clemson, North Carolina, and I wanted to get into that first and foremost. Not really, but I'm okay. Ty, you're always a sight for sore eyes. You look resplendent in a button-down collared shirt. You got a great night of sleep. You're looking business casual. I'm sitting here in a t-shirt. If you're watching this live on verballers.com, you're seeing this, but it's always a joy to be with you on Sunday morning. You know that.
And you as well. Look, we got a great batch of calls that I'm going to play later on in the show. If you stop by to hear your reverbs, we will play those a little bit later on before Dan and I have an opportunity here, or after Dan and I have an opportunity here to speak our piece on all things college football week 9. We addressed week 9 on the preview show as Step Up Saturday or as Slay the Dragon Saturday. Really, whatever you were into, you could go with because there were a bunch of big matchups. In the end, I came out of this last night feeling like, yeah, this was a shut up tie Saturday. Shut up tie.
Yeah.
Shut up tie. Baylor is not losing to Texas Tech. Shut up tie. It's not like Penn State is going to actually beat Ohio State. Not that I honestly believe that, but shut up tie. It's not like Florida is going to hang, quote unquote, hang with Georgia. All of these things that I think we constructed, maybe late at night, staring at the ceiling, hoping for things in week 9. A lot of it didn't come true. We got a lot of what I thought was very unsurprising, what was very expected from some of the best teams in college football.
For sure. I mean, I did mention Oklahoma State in losing and being shut out in the most pronounced way as a top 10 team by a non-top 10 team in like 60 years. Yes, it was a sit-down tie, shut up tie, so what tie kind of Saturday. And that's great because I'm sure there have been 3.5 to 4.5 versions of that with my picks. And that's okay because we put ourselves out there, Ty.
We do.
And that's important. We speak with our chest. We sign our names to our very bad picks, and that happens. I don't even know where to start with this one, so I will defer to you. But this was wall-to-wall entertaining for me.
It was wall-to-wall entertaining. Why don't we start with the Verballer Top 10, which dropped this morning. If you are listening, wondering how can you be part of this poll, go and sign up at verballers.com. You not only support our show, but you can make your voice heard with respect to our top 10. After week 9, it looks like this. Georgia and Tennessee 1 and 2, which is wild because they play each other in Athens next weekend. We will talk about that game in due time, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Like, wow, this is coming. Also, 3 and 4, Ohio State and Michigan. That game also a few weeks away, but likely that they're going to remain on this collision course towards one another for the remaining, 3 weeks before we get to that big Week 13 matchup. Clemson and Alabama 5 and 6. Clemson and Alabama both with monster games this coming weekend. Clemson maybe less so on the road at Notre Dame at night. Yeah. We will talk about that one. Alabama, a big SEC West contest on the road again at night in Death Valley against LSU. Rounding out our top 10, we've got number 7 TCU, number 8 Oregon, your Oregon Ducks. Number 9, USC, sort of quasi-escaped Tucson. We'll talk about that one momentarily.
Yep.
And number 10, UCLA. So a contingent of Pac-12 teams rounding out the top 10. Also a clumping of teams, let's say, from various conferences clogging up the works through the top 4.
By the way,
any surprises in seeing that top 10?
No, not especially. I was just going to say, if you are experiencing any team clumping, do see a medical professional. No, that I don't have huge issue with it. I have issues with certain teams and what that's going to look like down the line when they play bigger and better teams. But in terms of how we see it, UCLA might be a little bit high at the moment after what they did to Oregon, how they performed against a top 10 team. But otherwise, no, I'm good with it. I especially, maybe we can start in the SEC because of Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee, whatever. But it's great to see Tennessee in that spot. It's great to have that usual team that has been far on the outside looking in be squarely in the velvet rope area of the college football universe.
And it will be of particular interest to see what happens on Tuesday evening when the first set of playoff rankings comes out. I suspect Tennessee should be part of that. We will start with Florida, Georgia, the big rivalry game. Florida won this game. Florida covered this game.
Oh, my God. I was like, holy hell, what game did I watch? I am not prepared for this episode.
Florida won this game in one sense, but very much not in another. Georgia won the game 42-20. They went up 28-3 at half after giving a touchdown to a bunch of their key contributors, right? We had Edwards and McIntosh and Bowers and McConkey, all those guys getting in on the action. All of those names had a pretty big game. Nice game.
They did.
Nice game for Georgia. Much of what you'd expect. Florida fought back, though, valiantly for those of us who had Florida plus 22.5 or plus 23.
Yeah.
At what point the Gators pulled within a score.
They did.
Late in the third quarter, 28-20, a nice 78-yard touchdown grab and run from Xavier Henderson. But then Georgia stopped playing with its food, a term we've used here time and again on the show. Stopped playing with their food. They poured it on in the final couple moments of the game with 2 scores, ended up winning by 22 points. Down the stretch, Georgia looked really good putting this game out of reach. The issue, though, is 3 turnovers. And whenever you're talking about the Georgia Bulldogs, of course, you're splitting hairs, trying to find things that are wrong. Everyone's trying to find something that's wrong with a thing that otherwise is pretty good, right? The 3 turnovers, though, are of note, especially going into a week where they're going to have to square off against Tennessee, because that is not an offense. It's not Florida's offense. The Tennessee offense is not one you want to give extra opportunities. You don't want to give them 3 extra drives next week. That could definitely have ramifications. In this one, they get away with it. I guess it's not that big of a deal. But even in the post-game comments, Kirby Smart, as these coaches are wont to do, they point out all of the flaws that immediately got stuck in their craw. And I think that would be the only thing really on the Georgia side that you would look at and say, all right, they need to improve that.
Isn't it amazing that was it 2 years ago, Kyle Trask lit up this Georgia team, this Georgia program, and now we are coming away from this game saying, well, Georgia won by 3 touchdowns, but what's going on with the Dogs? They just beat Florida by 3 touchdowns. Should we be a little bit worried? That's an incredible turn of events to get lit up by Kyle Trask and Dan Mullen, Kyle Pitts, and all that. Yeah, you're not wrong. The fact that Georgia came out the way that they did, so confidently and so assured of their game plan and so balanced, and Sets and Bennett making plays and the defense obviously making plays and really roughing up Florida early. Florida could get nothing going on offense early in this game. It was 28-3 quickly, right?
Yeah.
Florida scored 3 points in the first half of this game. And so I think we're basically seeing stretches of Georgia looking human. And that is kind of shocking after last year. And I think we just need to look at Georgia as its own thing this year, because it's not fair to judge Georgia against what they were last year, to me, because they were just so above and beyond. So Georgia is a really strong team. They are among the country's best. They are not an A-plus perfect team every minute of every game. That was my takeaway, that you can beat a rival at a neutral site, even though it's a rival with a first-year coach, even if it's a flawed rival, a rival with its own successful baggage by 3 touchdowns. You got to, at a certain point, if you're a Georgia fan, or if you cover the sport nationally, or you just enjoy the sport nationally, say, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice little Saturday for the Dogs.
I don't even have a sound for what they did here. It was like they were cooking a steak, they let it rest, and then they ate it. Yeah. That was what happened here. I don't have someone to put a sound together for that. Be my guest. But 42-20, your final score here, as Georgia goes into a big week against Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Tennessee wasn't looking ahead to the Georgia game.
As I tried to tell you.
Maybe Tennessee was not looking ahead. Shut up, Ty. Tennessee wins 44-6, Dan. This one was not even close.
No.
Tennessee just absolutely obliterated the Kentucky Wildcats, both on offense, as they often do, but also on defense. 205 total yards for the Cats. Will Levis, first round prospect Will Levis.
Yeah.
98 yards passing with 3 interceptions. They basically turned him into Spencer Petras in this game, which is not meant to be as mean as it sounds, but it's still pretty mean.
Spencer Petras had a better day than Will Levis did yesterday.
Still pretty mean. Pretty mean. Hendon Hooker missed 6 throws. Another monster game for Jalen Hyatt, who is starting to creep into the Heisman discussion as Hendon Hooker continues his run as Tennessee quarterback. It is fully shaping into an SEC Saturday next weekend in Week 10 because of not just the Tennessee-Georgia game, but also the Bama-LSU one that I mentioned earlier. But there really isn't much you can say here, Dan. This was a quick game in the sense that Tennessee asserted its dominance rather quickly. I was watching, waiting, hoping that Kentucky would mount more of a comeback, more of a charge, put up more of a fight. They had nothing. They had nothing here, no answer for Tennessee. And I came away from this one feeling like, first off, Tennessee's getting better. Secondly, wondering if the big win over Bama a few weeks ago now was some sort of watershed moment for the Vols, in that they got over that hump and now they are able to ascend to some greater height. Almost like Neo at the end of the Matrix. He's just waiting for something. Mm-hmm. Was that moment, the waiting for that moment, the Alabama win for Tennessee? Because they were awesome. They were just awesome in this game. Yeah,
and they just sort of did what they've been doing on offense. They were balanced. They were fast. They were going downfield. Obviously, Cedric Tillman comes back. Not a huge factor in this specific game, but certainly adds gravity to the situation that you have to pay attention to him if you're in that Kentucky secondary. And Kentucky secondary had its hands absolutely full. They got torched. You saw like sort of the delay routes and the crossing routes, and Jalen Hyatt, just creeping into the Heisman conversation, just creeping into the end zone over and over again for Tennessee. And this Kentucky defense has been their strength. They were on their heels the entire time. They did not look prepared for the tempo. They did not look prepared for the speed. Very few teams are and will be. Alabama was not fully ready with a better secondary than what Kentucky puts on the field. But no, Tennessee is operating. I saw the comparisons. I think it was Stu Mandel from The Athletic talking about how there are comparisons creeping in, like you say, Jalen Hyatt in the Heisman conversation, about comparisons to the 2019 LSU team, which, given the magnitude and the manner in which Tennessee is scoring, and given that, the defense has shown signs of life and holding their own like they did against LSU, now what they did against Kentucky, I don't think this year's Tennessee defense is where that year's, it was different, was it not? Calling that LSU defense, but showing signs of life, this Tennessee defense, as the season progresses. If you remember, they had the back and forth game against Pitt, obviously back and forth against Alabama, but getting more and more stops as they're getting healthier. And I mean, it's this year's, even though Alabama LSU is a very big game, Georgia Tennessee seems to be, the way that we always used to joke, the game of the year of the millennium kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a huge game. These two teams have been a bit on a collision course, if you would believe a lot of the preseason hype. I think we were all pretty high on Tennessee. We just weren't sure how high we were allowed to be. It felt like there was some risk to really putting yourself out there and going all in on the Vols, because there were questions, right? There were questions about the offensive line and the defense. And, some of that stuff is still there, but the offense is playing at such a high level right now. As you said, a good Kentucky defense just seemed ill-prepared. They had no answers for it. They were getting confused. They weren't prepared for the speed. So it'll be interesting. Next week will be very, very interesting when Tennessee goes to Athens. I'm excited.
Man, Will Levis did not have himself a night.
Not
Will
a first
Levis
round
was
pick.
Completely
Not a first
under
round
fire,
pick, guys. Hate to inform
confused by the Tennessee defense. Yeah, that was wall-to-wall dominance from the Vols.
Not a really nice kid and a good prospect.
Yeah.
Not a first round pick.
Okay, whatever. Not my concern.
Ohio State 44, Penn State 31. How much of this game did you watch?
All of it.
Yeah. I watched a post-game video with our friend Dave Jones from PennLive.com.
Mm-hmm.
We've had him on the show for years. You can go back and find a bunch of interviews with Dave. I thought he said it best. You think you might diffuse all the Ohio State bombs, and then boom, there's one you didn't know about.
Right.
And then boom, there's one you didn't expect. And then there's another one that you didn't expect. And suddenly it's over and you're just sort of dazed and confused.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened here for Penn State. I mean, between a defensive end going off who was a highly regarded prospect, and between Marvin Harrison Jr., then Trey Henderson popping you, and C.J. Stroud throwing for 350 despite not having his best game of the year, Ohio State just has so many weapons on offense, so many ways that they can beat you, and they can do it quickly, in the blink of an eye. Penn State in this game, I thought, played pretty well. The 4 turnovers from Sean Clifford aside.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. But we talked a lot about if we're constructing this universe in which Penn State actually beats Ohio State, how do they do it? It goes without saying they got to play the best game they've played all year, maybe the best game they've played in the last 5 years because of this offense. Penn State in this one got about as close to that as you would expect. I thought they played pretty well. It still was not enough because of the turnovers on some level, but ultimately just because Ohio State's really freaking good, because they've got all of those dudes across the board who at a moment's notice, bam, can make you pay for just the slightest oversight on defense. Incredible. They're really, really good, Ohio State.
That wasn't even the issue for me. Like, on a certain level, yes, of course, we think Ohio State is going to get theirs eventually. That no defense is deep enough to shut them down for 4 full quarters in the way that Penn State was doing it. The problem is the Penn State offense, even when they were operating, they were not nearly doing enough to hold up their end of the bargain. That the reason turnovers are so killer, this is, the Underthink Express, this is the Captain Obvious thing, is you just put your defense in such a bind that they can't hold on forever. Penn State does not go 3 deep with excellence at every position on their defense, especially when they're given short fields because of turnovers. The story here is Ohio State won in new ways. They won with defense. They won with star power in the way that we saw them do with Chase Young or the way we saw them do with Joey Bosa, but haven't seen for a minute. To have that kind of superstar performance from JT Tuimoloau, I hope I got that somewhere in the vicinity of right, who, by the way, JT is not short for anything other than his actual first name, which starts with a J. I think it's Jalen Tuimoloau, and then he just sort of went by JT. I learned that because obviously he was the star of yesterday.
Yeah, he had 2 interceptions, one that he ran back for a touchdown.
Yep, forced fumble, yep.
The sack, 2 sacks, the forced fumble. Yeah, I mean, just a huge game from him. Ohio State always has that game change. It seems like every year when Penn State plays Ohio State, Ohio State's got that game changer along the front 7 that impacts the game in a really outsized way, and it was JT.
It was absolutely JT. I didn't love Ohio State's play calling and overall game plan in the first half. It was a lot of weird short stuff and running, and obviously Mayan Williams gets hurt early on, which made them a little bit more dimensional in the running game with only Trey Henderson. It's just different. It's different than what they've been used to having in the backfield. C.J. Stroud going with a lot of short stuff instead of downfield for longer stretches of that game. I don't know if that's a Ryan Day issue. I don't know if that's a whatever issue, but Ohio State just didn't seem like themselves, most of which was because of a very, very good and pressuring Penn State defense.
Yeah.
But the fact remains, if Sean Clifford is going to step back and throw a screen pass and throw it directly into the palms of a defensive end, this wasn't JT Tuimoloau jumping 12 feet in the air to tip this ball. This was him making a heads-up, well-coached play of getting his hands in the air and into a passing lane, but it was a predetermined throw on that screen that it didn't matter who was in the way of the receiver. That's where Sean Clifford was throwing it to. It was bad mistake. It was, putting the ball in the wrong place when JT Tuimoloau dropped into coverage. It was obviously he got strip sacked later on in the game. It was the case and the issue of an offense that didn't really know what it wanted to do and then leaned into what it didn't do well into high leverage moments when that power T formation on those fourth and shorts.
Listen, 4th and short, just run a toss. Run a toss to the number 1 5-star recruit out of Pennsylvania and let him run. Let him run for 1 yard. He can get that. And I've seen the numbers on it. The toss on 4th and 1 usually works pretty well. Just run the toss. Don't get cute with it. I don't know what the hell that was. I will push back a little bit, though, on the Penn State offensive front. You're not wrong. A lot of what you're saying is not wrong. But did you also not scoff at the mere notion that Penn State would move the quote-unquote move the ball on this Ohio State defense? Obviously, they did not win, but they outgained Ohio State in this football game. The offense moved the ball reasonably well. Parker Washington, I don't know where they would have been in this game if not for Parker Washington.
I think that's right.
Who had an incredible effort and certainly was, I think, the driving force behind this offense, taking the lid off the defense, making some big plays here. But the offense as a whole did okay, maybe better than we expected.
Well, it's easier to outgain a team when your offense gives the defense short fields in which they can't physically gain a huge number of yards if the turnovers are giving them short fields and pick sixes, Ty. That's how that works.
The Penn State defense played pretty well in this game. All things considered, the Penn State defense played pretty well. There was, again, that pinata moment that we talked about with the Michigan game, which happened a little bit more in slow motion in the Michigan game. In this one, it happened all at once, where Penn State was in it. They were leading in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 21-16.
And again, found a way to give it away. And that's been a story for Penn State in this matchup, in some other matchups as well, where they're clearly in the game, but they don't have what it takes to get over that hump. They don't have whatever it takes to get the dub, and then suddenly all at once it gets away from them. Happened again. It happened again.
20 points in 6 game minutes? Was that the final stretch of... Yeah, well, they covered. So
they did cover.
There's that.
There's that.
It's the problem. It's a stretch issue for Penn State. It's a stretch issue that, to start a game at home with that frenzied crowd, with the defense playing as well as it did, that Penn State's offense was not up to the task. A lot of short stuff, a lot of, okay, let's get 4 yards on 3rd and 3, whatever, and not really testing Ohio State. And then when they did, they had success. But it's that stretch stuff that you can't afford to do with an advantageous situation, advantageous environment in a game where you're going to need points. Didn't they kick a field goal at a certain point? That disappointed me a little bit. I think they were down 30-21 on like 4th and 4 in the red zone. And like, well, let's get to 30-24. Like, that's what you think is going to win you this game in this moment. That's what you think? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could second guess the game decisions one for one if we want to. It's more of a recurring theme with Franklin.
Sure.
Where they're in kind of these, I don't know, these fringe spaces in the football game where they need to make a big decision, and it doesn't feel like they're doing anything confidently. I don't know. There were moments in this game where they were aggressive. There were other moments in this game where they were maybe more conservative than they shouldn't be. That's probably a good example of one. But nonetheless, Ohio State was a better team, I think, is the big takeaway here.
Definitely.
And as you said, the big takeaway for a lot of folks should be that Ohio State won in new ways. It's not unexpected that they would go on the road and win, but I thought this was really impressive. They got the best that Penn State had to offer, and they came away with the dub. Let's go to another top 10 team on the road, another undefeated team on the road, and talk about TCU.
Yeah, weird game.
Yeah, really weird game. TCU wins 41-31 on the road in Morgantown against West Virginia. Interestingly, they had lost 4 in a row to West Virginia, so they broke that losing streak. 2 halves that were very different. The first half was a track meet, a combined 637 yards and 48 points. The second half was a little bit different in that it had something for everybody, let's say.
Yeah.
A few chances for West Virginia to tie the game or take the lead. Again, you see the potential, I guess, with the Mountaineers, Dan, but you also see the inconsistency. You see the big moments. You see them with a chance to tie it, going 3 and out, gaining -3 and having to punt. Giving the ball back to TCU, TCU scoring a touchdown, putting the game on ice. They picked off Max Duggan, the play that I'm referring to, the drive that I'm referring to.
The late one? Yeah.
They had picked off Max Duggan. They had about 4 minutes left. They were down 34-31. Just went nowhere with their ensuing drive. They punted back to TCU. TCU eventually puts the game on ice. So,
by the way, don't gloss over one of the worst beats gambling-wise at the end of that game, getting a free play on an offsides and getting a touchdown at it. If you had West Virginia, I think it was plus 7.5.
Yeah.
Brutal. Stake to the heart. Sorry about that.
Front door cover.
Yeah.
Sorry, doggos.
Sorry, doggos.
TCU 8-0 for the first time since 2015, Dan. This is viewed as a losable game by many in Vegas. We talked about it on the preview. A lot of the sharp bettors were in on West Virginia. So bad beat for them, for sure. What did we learn from TCU, if anything, here? We saw more big plays. Yep. We know they live by the sword, die by the sword to some extent. Those big plays were there, at least in the first half. Second half, this was another one of these games, they keep finding themselves in these spots here late where they have to not necessarily come from behind. They didn't have to in this one, but spots late that are really testing their mettle. And again, they make it work, 8-0.
I think it's the same thing, winning in new and different ways, especially after what we saw or really didn't see from the TCU defense last year. I thought they got more aggressive over the course of the second half against West Virginia and really put pressure on JT Daniels and the West Virginia much maligned offensive line. Kendre Miller is an absolute joy to watch at running back. This low key, by the way, has been an incredibly overwhelming running back season in college football all over the sport. And Kendre Miller is a representative along, of course, with Bijan Robinson and Deuce Vaughn in the Big 12. I apologize, Richard Reese. I'm
Richard Reese,
Richard Reese, yes, at Baylor obviously has been a revelation, but just in the Big 12, in the sport and beyond. So Kendre Miller has done a terrific job. Obviously, losing Zach Evans was thought to be a bigger deal than it has turned out to be for the Frogs, and just heartbreaking for West Virginia, I'm sure, because the receivers made plays. C.J. Donaldson made plays. The defense came up big at times. West Virginia did get that short field on one of the most egregious special teams refereeing calls of all time.
Bad day for refs yesterday.
Real bad day. When a West Virginia player blocked a TCU guy into his own punt returner, and it was reviewed and eventually ruled that, TCU touched it and West Virginia recovered it. And what? That's what you gleaned? So that was something. This was the game, along with, I think it was Illinois and Nebraska that I mentioned, where I was like, this team appears to be really good. If they are excellent, or if they are a fully realized team, or if they are maximizing their potential, they will win this very difficult situational matchup. TCU did it. Proud of you, Frogs. You are a very, very good team with they have Baylor left. Yes, the rivalry is left, and
they've got
that's
Texas
looming
Tech.
very large.
Their November is Texas Tech next week at home.
Mm-hmm.
Then they've got back-to-back road trips to Texas and Baylor before coming back home to close things out against Iowa State.
Yeah. I love the Big 12. Big 12 is incredible. So good for the Frogs. Where are we going next?
Let's stay in the Big 12. Let's just round out the Big 12 quickly.
Let's do it.
If we could. Kansas State 48. I hit the wrong button.
You hit it.
Hold on, let me do this. Kansas State 48. Oklahoma State 0.
Guess who just got murdered?
Holy crap, Dan. Holy whatever. Oklahoma State couldn't get anything going at all. They had 217 yards of offense. Spencer Sanders, 13 of 26 with a pick. Meanwhile, Will Howard, we got a million tweets from people saying that Will Howard, the pride of Downingtown, mind you, needs to be one of our dudes in the Dude Alerts segment that we do a little bit later on. We will do that. 4 touchdowns in the first half. Deuce Vaughn went off. It was 35-0 at half. Wow. I did not expect this.
You're doing like the Owen Wilson. Wow. So this is a stand-up Dan Saturday game, because this was one of the easier games to preview in my mind going into it, as I pat myself on the back saying Oklahoma State with the Texas layover going at Manhattan, Kansas. Like, we've seen this kind of situation before in the Big 12 especially, and that I liked Kansas State a good deal. Especially, I said, man, it's weird to say, especially if Will Howard is healthy, because he was beat up a little bit the week prior.
The pride of Downingtown, Will Howard.
The pride of Downingtown. Not a huge arm, but throws with touch and is confident and made killer plays.
It's not Bryant Moniz pop gun arm.
No. But he had been a liability before this year, and I think the plan was for him to redshirt, obviously with Kansas State bringing in Adrian Martinez, so he stepped in so admirably. Obviously, Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks have been, everybody I think that watches Kansas State, certainly more than I do, knew that they are very promising receivers, game-changing type receivers, and the passing game just hasn't always been consistent. With the passing game as open as it was at times against Oklahoma State, and then opening up lanes for Deuce Vaughn, this is one of the more dangerous second-half teams in the country to me. They're still in line, I think. Yep. They control their ability to take on TCU for a rematch in North Texas, I believe, at the moment. So they're in a good spot, and I loved that you talk about, who did you reference about, Davy Jones with like, as soon as you feel like you've diffused everything, something else pops up. I think Derek Mason after the game talked about like sitting in a canoe and seeing leaks everywhere and then realizing all 10 fingers and all 10 toes were accounted for and you're still sinking. That was the feeling. Oklahoma State is beat up. Spencer Sanders is beat up. There's still no running game to speak of in Stillwater or anywhere Oklahoma State plays. And so I think this is a really good team that has very clear flaws and situationally wrong day, wrong team, wrong time of the season.
But hold
Kansas State.
Hold on.
Did away with them. What?
48-0.
I know, man. I know.
40. You can say what you want about Oklahoma State. They're beat up. And Dan.
I'm just trying to add context to the situation. That's all.
They were 6-1, back in the top 10 with plenty of season in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of opportunity to jump back into that conversation, really whatever conversation they want. Playoff thing, still doable. The Big 12, obviously still doable on some level.
Yeah.
This game was a sad fart for Oklahoma State. That's what this was. This was a disappearing act, and this was inexcusable. 48-0. Thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks for playing.
That's real bad. Did you
really
see
bad.
Mike Gundy's son's, the backup quarterback for Oklahoma State? Did you see his interception?
Yeah.
Oh my God. The worst kind of interception when you try to do something unorthodox and fling the ball backhanded and like, oh, nope, that's going to be an issue. Kansas State, wall to wall. I've used that phrase already this morning a couple times. Just an absolute demolition of the Pokes.
Let's round out the Big 12 quickly here. We've got a lot to get to. Baylor 45, Texas Tech 17, Oklahoma 27, Iowa State 13. I appreciate the reminders from everybody in the Baylor community that I locked up Texas Tech. I appreciate that reminder. My question back to the very fine folks of the Baylor community.
Yeah.
Would you rather that I locked up your team? Would you rather that I locked up your team?
I don't
Be
think
careful
there was
what you wish for, kind sir, kind madam. Because if you want, actually, let's just do that right now.
Oh my God, Ty.
Lock of the week.
Petty podcasting king.
Baylor minus whatever, plus whatever next week against Oklahoma on the road.
Okay.
You wanted it, now you got it.
That's not a bad deal.
Just saying. Good game for Baylor, by the way. Baylor looked good.
By the way, you putting whatever it is that you put into the ether with locking up Baylor or whatever, guess what? The Baylor defense will intercept that too, as they did to Baron Morton 3 times. Texas Tech was trying everything on offense, and that defense, the Ron Roberts unit, well, that's not a great phrase, wasn't having it. They absolutely were not having it. They stomped him on the ground on offense. Blake Shapen was fine, but really it was defense and running and a very comfortable victory, especially they won the sort of second half going away, right? They just got stronger and stronger as it went along.
Can we file a petition henceforth to label all of Richard Reese's touchdowns as Reese's Pieces?
I'd love to, yeah. Not a sponsor, could be.
3 more Reese's Pieces in this game. The freshman looking really, really good. He's got 12 on the year. The Oklahoma game, very quickly, the highlight was the fake field goal in the second quarter.
Great fake field goal. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen that style of fake field goal before, but this was just our line is better than yours, and we're going to snap it to the holder and just hand it off to the kicker, who's going to run like a split zone right up the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And as he said in the postgame, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. He just went in 2 yards out, touchdown. Great play in second quarter.
Am I seeing this correct? Because I had this game on mute above. I think it was Ohio State, Penn State was happening at the same time. 1 touchdown drive from the offense. Is that what I'm seeing here? They returned an interception to the 2-yard line and punched it in. Then they had the fake field goal, which is it's an eventual touchdown, of course, thanks to the offense driving the field. But the offense didn't punch it in. The fake field goal did. The offense was fine. They didn't really do much through the air. There were some drops that were involved. Eric Gray was good. I think he got beat up a little bit. It was a nice enough day for the offensive line. Iowa State's offense is a nightmare.
It was, it was a nightmarish type thing again for Iowa State. 3 more turnovers. More of a defensive struggle than I expected. I mean, Iowa State plays decently enough on defense, but did not expect that it would be this kind of game. Dylan Gabriel didn't really have like a banner effort or anything All I would say with this one with Oklahoma is they weren't electric on offense, but they weren't quite as sloppy as we've seen at moments. So it was fine. It was just a fine win. Oklahoma needed it. On to next week.
Let me clarify. Win your pseudo clunkers, and if you lose to Texas 49-0 and you only beat Iowa State 27-13 or whatever it was, great. Awesome. Take it on to next week. A win is a win is a win.
Which conference you want to go to next?
Let's go to the ACC. What a nightmare weird week.
A nightmare weird week. Let me rifle through some of the results here, and then we can sort of pick and choose. North Carolina scores 28 unanswered after going down 10 in the third quarter to beat Pitt 42-24. We had Louisville. Oh gosh, Louisville.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this. Louisville won 48-21. There is more to discuss on the Wake Forest side, I promise you. Notre Dame 41-24 over the Syracuse Orange. Cuse threw a pick six on the very first play of the game, which was a bit of a harbinger of things to come.
Was that Brandon Joseph, the Northwestern transfer, who caught that?
I don't recall.
Okay, sorry. Put you on the spot.
We had Florida State winning big over Georgia Tech, 41-16. Miami, oh God, another one.
Oh my
Miami
God,
in quadruple overtime wins 14-12 over Virginia, one of those types of games for the Hurricanes. We had UConn knocking off BC 13-3. We had a very excitable reverb that we're going to get to a little bit later on here in the broadcast. And last but not least, we had NC State by a 22-21 margin on Thursday or Friday, earlier in the week.
Yeah, I think it was Thursday,
over Virginia Tech.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can start right there real quick. I think was it MJ Morris who came in and was actually really nice in the second half as they had a really impressive comeback win against a Virginia Tech team who, I mean, this was like, was it scoreless or 3-0, something like that at halftime. And then it was kind of explosive, a ton of just sloppiness from Virginia Tech, of course, in the second half, but really nice performance from NC State to hang with it after a crazy ugly first half.
Jack Chambers did not have it going in the passing game, and they bring in MJ Morris, and he was much better at working the ball down the field. So it'll be interesting to see what NC State looks like if he is, in fact, going to be the guy now moving forward, because there's some big games for NC State left on the schedule. There's still a top 25 team, so I'm curious to see what type of path this thing takes for the Wolfpack.
Pitt, North Carolina looked like it was going to be like a back and forth slugfest all game long, because that's what it kind of was in the first half. Keaton Slovis to Jared Wayne over the whole game was really impressive. Izzy Abanikanda, excuse me, had his runs as he's been doing basically all year long. North Carolina kind of sluggish in the first half, and weirdly enough, havoc plays and stops from the defense in the second half led to opportunities for Drake May, who's already one of the best 4-7 quarterbacks in the country. Must be nice. Must be nice for North Carolina.
Gene Chizik, baby. Gene Chizik.
I guess. I don't know. Pitt's super beat up on their offense. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with the Pitt team that doesn't fully make sense to me, to my eyes, but whatever. North Carolina, really impressive win. That was, I think, at home in Chapel Hill.
It was at home, yeah. And by the way, just for those of you playing along at home, on the Drake May unstoppable beat.
He's unbelievable.
He had 5 more touchdowns. He has a 77% completion percentage, and now through week 9, a 29-3 touchdown to interception ratio. So I've been saying it, Carolina is an ultra quiet one-loss team. And the remaining schedule is at Virginia, at Wake, Georgia Tech, and NC State. 4 very winnable games given the level of offense that they're playing. So don't sleep on North Carolina. I won't play the Taylor Swift here, but don't sleep on Carolina as an 11-win team.
By the way,
because they're playing really well.
I'm already ahead to next year, Ty. We're already on to Cincinnati. Next year, because Drake May might be the Heisman favorite going into next year, they open up with South Carolina, App State, and Minnesota to begin the season. That's a nice little, here I am, everybody. Pay attention to me, September, for Drake May, if he's able to perform. Elsewhere in the ACC, first of all, I don't watch Syracuse games when they play in the JMA. as closely as I'd like to because the angle is the worst camera angle in college
so
football.
Bad. It's so bad.
I got my way through it. But I guess that's sort of the experience of watching the Notre Dame offense as well. And you can speak to that. A win is a win is a win. But man, that was probably not a fun 3 hours of your life.
It wasn't, well.
The defense, watching the Notre Dame defense was probably really fun.
No, the offense was fine for the most part. The bright spot was that the offensive line was dominant. And they've been improving. This was a game where they had almost 250 yards of the ground, both Audric Estime, Logan
I was
Diggs.
going to say, that guy's awesome.
Yeah,
I like watching
dude.
him. Yeah.
Big dude, 20 carries apiece. Like they're slowly starting to assert their dominance along the offensive line. And by that, I mean they're just getting better and more organized. They were clearly better than Cuse in this game along that front. And so I wish they would have stuck more with that. But instead, they're just not good at quarterback. And so anytime they're trying to do more at quarterback, there are times where the play calling doesn't help Drew Pine or Drew Pine doesn't help the play calling. I don't want to keep harping on it because Notre Dame is where they are at this moment. This is who they're going to have to ride with the rest of the way. I suspect if they thought Steve Angeli were better, we would have seen him by now. But it's just in games like this where they're really limited by the quarterback play. Mm-hmm. And they could have had this game on ice early in the third quarter. Instead, because of the play calling, because of the quarterbacking, because of a number of different factors, limitations with the offense, I think stemming from the quarterback and the play calling, let's say, Cuse was able to get back in it and make it a one-score game. Mm-hmm. Garrett Schrader went down with an ankle, that type of thing. But Notre Dame should have been better. They should have closed this one out stronger. They could have had 55 points, I think, with a better offense. But nonetheless, they ran the ball. We'll see what they can do next week against Clemson. That'll be a big showing.
Do you think Marcus Freeman, after the game, if he congratulated Carlos Del Rio Wilson, went up to him and said, hey, South Bend's pretty good?
Here's my card. Look me up. Here's my email at nd.edu.
He seemed kind of scary and promising, right?
I thought he looked really good, yeah.
This was Notre Dame pushing around Syracuse up front. Syracuse's the strength of their defense is confusing teams and also the back end and really stepping into passing lanes impressively. And Notre Dame just needed to go straight at them. Drew Pine, of course, stared down Michael Mayer much more often than he should have. But this game should have been 35-13, if not for some fits and starts from the Notre Dame offense and some predictability from the Notre Dame offense. But look, you went on the road and beat a ranked team. Syracuse is ranked, right?
They were. They were. They're a top 15 team, yeah.
Hard to complain about that. The defense seems to be coming together. Who's the rush end once again? That's Foskey. See the guy?
Isaiah Foskey.
He's all over the place. He's a real fun guy to watch.
Blocked 2 punts last week. All right, talk to me about Louisville Wake Forest. Just do it.
It just got out of hand. It was as if the communications between the booth to the quarterback and whoever's wearing the headset on defense got twisted.
Holy crap. 48-21 was the final score.
Yeah.
This game was 14-13 at half. Wake had 10 drives in the second half and 8 turnovers. Yeah. 8 out of 10. 80% of their drives in the second half went for turnovers.
I think it was 6 in the third quarter.
Yeah. They had a pick six, a fumble, an interception, fumble, punt, pick six, fumble, interception, then closed out the game with a touchdown. That was their drive chart. You don't even have to do it.
No.
In the second half. Just beautifully, horribly executed.
It's basically, we've all had that day. We've all had that clunker that you just can't win, where you just got to say, you know what? I just got screwed over by the universe and there's nothing I can do, right? You get fired, then you get dumped, and then you get to your car and there's a ticket, then you get a flat tire in a pothole. Like, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And it was just one of those weeks. I still think Wake is a pretty good team that just ran into the wrong universe on the wrong day. And good for Louisville for taking advantage, as good teams do. Which I think they're now 5-3. I don't know if they're good, but I think the conversation about Scott Satterfield got a little bit quieter after beating a ranked team in that manner. Yes?
How does it feel to you as an Oregon fan, knowing that Mario Cristobal took his talents to South Beach?
Sure, of course.
Maybe feel a little bit scorned. Maybe not as much now, given the fact that Dan Lanning looks pretty good, looked pretty comfortable in his own right now as the head signal caller for your Ducks. But how does it feel to just look across the world, look at the box score and see 14-12 Miami in quadruple overtime?
I can tell you how it feels, Ty. punt, 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 field goal, punt, downs, punt, field goal, punt, field goal. Oh God, we're in overtime. And there's just more punting and field goals. 4 overtimes! 4 overtimes to get to 14-12. I don't throw Dvorak in every week, Ty, but when I do, it's for good reason.
This was horrible. This game was horrible. Miami needed a field goal as time expired to tie the game at 6 apiece against Virginia. 6 apiece. Miami, I think, so, okay, first off, not a nice win, but a win nonetheless. So you'll take the win if you're a Miami fan, if you're Mario Cristobal. You can read the post-game comments if you want to. We don't have to go into all those. You can expect, you could probably predict without looking what was said. Okay, you know exactly what these coaches said after a game like this.
Yeah.
Miami, I think, is one of our candidates as we now turn the page into Tyvember, that we could start talking about Miami as the 1-2-3 Cancun team of the week, of the month, of the year.
I mean, they hung around in this one, I guess, right? They focused long enough to win.
I feel like it's not long before Miami just packs it in.
Okay. Could be. Game was ugly. Henry Parrish Jr. ran hard. So no TVD in this one. It's Jake Garcia, former blue chip quarterback. And I suppose everybody sort of plays their backup quarterback at a certain point, whether it's in garbage time, whether it's because of injury, whether it's because of performance. And Miami does not have Jake Garcia ready to succeed. The offense is not ready to succeed. They have injuries. Everybody has injuries. And you can say, well, it's Miami. It's Mario's first year. Like, guess what? It's Tony Elliott's first year. Guess what? It's Mike Elko's first year. So I think James Williams didn't play. He's a really good safety for Miami.
Yep.
It's a broken offense with broken play calling, with broken mindset about what offense should be, and you can put together your all-star cast of assistants and get everybody hot and bothered in December and January. You can sign a top 5 class, whatever you want to do. At the end of the day, this is what's on the sideline for you, Miami. And you might get a little bit better, and you're still going to have weeks like this. I'm sorry to say, and sure, I have my baggage as an Oregon fan. I'm just telling you, you're in for it.
You're in for it. All right.
You're in for this. And look, Miami won the game. It's good to win games. And they've had themselves a very tough season. This is not an FCS roster. This is not a low-level G5 roster. It's not an average Power 5 roster. It's a good roster. And so I don't know what to tell you. Get that win. But this was ugly.
Really ugly. Let's go over to the Big Ten. Let's talk about the Big Ten. Michigan 29, Michigan State 7. Took the Wolverines a little bit to get going here. They trailed 7-3 after the first quarter. From that point forward, 26 unanswered points. The numbers for Michigan, especially on defense, are really good.
Oh, yeah.
Sparty was held to 1.6 yards per carry. Really good. They have a really good defense. I don't want to nitpick about Michigan, but...
That's why I'm here. Continue.
That's why Dan's here. But we talk about Michigan as a top 4 team. Michigan's probably going to get some love when the first set of playoff rankings drops on Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
We do need to have a conversation about Michigan converting touchdowns instead of field goals. We do need to have that conversation about where would Michigan be if they didn't have Jake Moody. We do need to talk a little bit about what happened in this game because it's sort of a microcosm for what we've seen at moments throughout the course of the season. All right. 5 field goals in this game against a very shaky, albeit very motivated Michigan State defense. 5 field goals.
5 field goals.
5 field goals will work fine against most of the teams in the schedule.
Yeah.
It won't work against Ohio State. It's not going to work against Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama if they end up playing one of those better teams in the playoff. So what is it? What is it about this team Why are they not converting touchdowns and instead having to settle for field goals?
I think Jim Harbaugh is fashioning himself as Mario Cristobal plus. Like, he is successfully doing what Mario Cristobal wants to do and has struggled to do. And yes, I know I always make it about Mario Cristobal. It's funny. It's weird. Okay. Michigan had 1 touchdown drive in this game. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there was a special teams punt snap bobble that gave them the ball on the 8-yard line. So I don't really consider that a drive. They had 1 touchdown drive. And I want to say, was it 3rd or 4th down that Blake Corum had to break the tackle of unblocked, essentially an unblocked defensive lineman to get into the end zone. This underscores something else. Blake Corum is awesome.
He's really good.
Blake Corum is full on great at running back for Michigan. He runs so hard. He is that bowling ball. We love bowling balls in this sport. He's 5'8", 210s, 215, whatever he is.
He's a bowling ball with eyes. Yeah.
He is a pain in the ass. And I said it's the year of the running back. He is the representative. And it's very tough to be the representative in the Big Ten, but he has been the most impressive running back in a conference with some pretty impressive running backs. I appreciate that Michigan has an identity on offense. I appreciate that the offensive line has ascended to this point. I appreciate that J.J. McCarthy has a higher ceiling than Cade McNamara. But I can also appreciate what I've seen from the Michigan State defense this year. And they've been pretty decent in the red zone and pretty terrible elsewhere. They've gotten healthier. They're very motivated in this matchup because they don't want to be seen as little brother. But at the same time, this is not a Michigan offense that's at all built to win in multiple ways. It's not built to go downfield often. J.J. McCarthy probably takes off too soon when he has open guys and just needs to let them sort of get open. I don't know what it actually means because I still think they're good enough to beat Ohio State, but I also think they play in a manner in which they could also lose 13-10 to Illinois. And that to me is worrisome, that they don't have the ability to turn 3s into 7s. And so now the context of Michigan is, are they getting better against the best? Whether it's Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, whoever, if they end up in the playoff, they don't have that gear. They don't have that gear. And for them to mount 1 touchdown drive and to struggle like they did to turn 3s into 7s in the red zone should not be terribly encouraging if you're a Michigan fan. Now, beating Michigan State 29-7 is an incredible feeling. That defense is swarming and so good that you should be overall thrilled with where Michigan is as a program right now. But damn, is that disappointing. It's just when you have that 5-star quarterback, and this is the year where you're so deep at tight end, at running back, at receiver, and you're just like, well, here comes Moody. Here comes Moody. No, man, I want so much more for them, Ty.
Well,
I do.
I
want so much more for Blake Corum.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a frustrating feeling as a fan knowing that there is meat on the bone.
Yeah.
Knowing that there is more out there and they just weren't able to get it. Michigan's still in a really good spot.
Totally.
Michigan's going to play Ohio State. That game is going to have just an incredible amount of meaning and gravity to it in week 13. But I don't think you're wrong to say this is also the kind of team that could lose like 13-10 to Illinois at home.
I mean, it's a Michigan State defense that was bombed by Washington, bombed by Maryland. Like, did Wisconsin, I think in a losing effort because that was overtime, Wisconsin scored 3 touchdowns, right, during regulation against this Michigan State defense recently. So that to me is the issue. Now, on the other side of the ball, Keon Coleman is really good. I mean, I don't know what it means. I think he's a sophomore, but big receiver, made plays against a really good Michigan. I don't think the passing game is there. I don't think the running game is there for Michigan State at the moment. I think they need to look in their hearts for what the offense needs to be moving forward.
Search your feelings, Luke.
Because it's not there right now for Michigan State.
All right.
Also, weird tunnel stuff again. Did you see that?
Yeah, unfortunate tunnel stuff. And this was more than just a couple meatheads yelling things and pushing each other around. Jim Harbaugh said after the game that 2 of his players were assaulted, that he's working with authorities, try and figure out exactly what happened, bring those who are responsible, to light here. So we'll have to wait and see what transpired exactly on that front. But at least some of the video that I saw this morning circulating on social media is not very promising. So
no, it's not great.
Okay.
I hope the injuries are minimal. I hope justice for what, I hope everything is investigated, because it's easy to see like, well, Michigan State players just lost their cool, or Michigan State people are going to say the Michigan player clearly instigated it. Here's what I took away from it. solve this problem, Michigan people. Solve this tunnel and locker room issue and make sure people are not crossing over with your one tunnel and your locker room access. Block teams off and make sure there is an overlap. And then we'll have less of it. Not blaming victims, not blaming perpetrators. Clean up this issue. That's all.
Yeah, or put some fail-safes in place. You hate to see stuff like that. Okay, elsewhere in the Big Ten, very quickly, Illinois sort of sat on Nebraska. 26-9 was the final here. Huskers threw 3 picks. Couldn't really run it. 2 of 12 on third downs. Just 8 first downs all game, and then Casey Thompson got hurt. So Illinois, very efficient in knocking off Nebraska again, 26-9. Iowa wins by 20 over your Northwestern Wildcats, Dan.
For like the first time in a little bit, I think.
400 yards of offense for Brian Ferentz and the Hawkeyes offense. The Cats are really bad. They are so bad. The Cats are 1-7 on the season. They've got Ohio State, Minnesota, Purdue, and Illinois left on the schedule. They're going 1-11. I mean, I think the die is cast that they're going 1-11. And we had some folks tweeting us wondering, is this it for Fitzgerald? No. I find that hard to believe. I think he will be there for as long as he's willing to stay. But it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Been a minute since we could talk about a competent Northwestern offense.
So Northwestern has lost to Iowa recently. I take back what the allusion with the intro to this game. A really complete performance from Iowa, by the way. Both through the air and on the ground. Spencer Petras was, if nothing else, efficient, but they gave the ball to a number of backs. I didn't watch a ton of this game. It was not a high priority for me and sit down tie Saturday. But a nice enough performance to score points for Iowa, it seems. As for Illinois, Nebraska, the Brown brothers and Tommy DeVito. Sidney Brown on defense was everywhere. And of course, Chase Brown is toting the rock. Isaiah Williams, big play guy now out wide, developing for the Illini. And I think, is it in 2 weeks that they have Purdue? Essentially for the West, is what it seems at this moment. I think that game is in Champaign. So that's going to be a fascinating watch that I will watch because especially the Illinois defense has been very good TV. Anything else in the Big Ten?
Minnesota won 31-0 over Rutgers. They possessed the ball for 41 minutes.
Yeah.
Big game for Mo Ibrahim.
Mm-hmm. And Tanner Morgan was back, was he not?
Tanner Morgan was back, yeah.
That's a good thing to see.
Let's bounce over to the SEC.
Okay.
Ole Miss 31, Texas A&M 28. The bad news first. The bad news is that Texas A&M is now 3-5. And in order to make a bowl game, they have to win 3 of their remaining 4, which is not a given. They also gave up 390 yards on the ground to Ole Miss.
Yeah, man.
The good news.
Oh.
The good news. 28 points. Yeah. They've done it. They made it past 25, Dan. They did it.
On to 30.
On to 30. 28 points for the Aggies. And Connor Wegman.
Yeah.
Connor Wegman. If there is nothing else to play for this season other than a cheap bowl game, if you go 6-6 or 7-5, just take a deep breath. Take some solace in the fact knowing that Connor Wegman, true freshman, came in and looked really good. 338 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He played a little bit last week. He looked really green. I remember saying he looks green and not ready.
Yeah.
Well, we saw him this week. He looked far more prepared, and I think it's clear that he is the future. I know the tone among A&M fans is going to be, well, he should have been playing all along. Where was this guy from the start? You guys can have that conversation if you want to.
Yeah.
All I can do is report and react to what's happened now through 9 weeks of the college football season. Through 9 weeks of the college football season, there haven't been a whole lot of good stories on the Texas A&M offensive front. So to now have this with Connor Wegman, who looks promising, seems the future, to know that he makes everybody around him better, whether it's Devin A-Chain or Evan Stewart or whoever, that I think is promising. I would take that. I would feel good about that. I wouldn't care so much about the record because at this point, who cares? You're already falling far short of expectations. But the Connor Wegman thing, if he continues to progress, would be a really cool story for them.
Yeah, I mean, especially how rhythmically they came out of the gate. Moose Muhammad and Evan Stewart, Devin A-Chain, like the offense really looked like it had something. And I think in the short, medium, long term, whatever, it will under Connor Wegman. I mean, it's just one game, but there was a confidence there. There's a skill there. There's a poise there that as a freshman, if you see it, it generally means for good things.
You can tell. You could tell. And you know what? The line in front of them is a hot mess right now. I mean, they've got some issues on offense.
Yeah,
Texas
and they're beat up too, especially on the inside of that line. Yeah.
So it's not fair to just want to dunk on the A&M offense
right
all the time, the way we're sometimes prone to doing. I thought this is a positive story for them. Obviously, they would like the win.
It's a positive story for them. Also, Ole Miss ran for 400 yards in Kyle Field. Yeah.
A&M in this game, I think I read, had 8 injury timeouts on defense alone.
Okay.
Obviously, they gave up nearly 400 yards on the ground. A reasonable mind could make the case that this is a defense that is starting to wear down after 2 straight months of being leaned on to try and win games for the offense. They may have met their match here. They may slowly be starting to wear down a bit because Ole Miss didn't even try to throw it. Like they just bashed their brains in and ran for, again, 390.
Yeah, not much. So it seemed, again, I watched chunks of this game. I didn't watch every single snap, every single moment. But a lighter defense, like DJ Durkin was playing a lot of DBs in this one, and Ole Miss just started counting. It was kind of a vegan defense, as in not a lot of beef. And Quinshawn Judkins is a freshman doing this.
He turned 19 yesterday, Dan.
Oh, my God. You're 30 years older, Ty. 30 years older than Quinshawn Judkins.
I appreciate that.
No, another year of the running back element. He's great. The Ole Miss, I think Jackson Dart was really good making plays, and he should continue to keep growing. There are some flaws to this Ole Miss team in terms of offensive consistency and defensive consistency, but to go to Kyle Field, a place where they do not win often, and do what they did, especially on the ground. Let's reframe this for a second. It's not all about A&M, as you and I are guilty of doing sometimes. Ole Miss was super impressive in this one.
Off
to go
of
on
a
the
loss
road
too,
and
right?
stomp
off
them.
a loss.
Yes, off of a loss.
Yep. So
That's
Ole Miss is 8-1 now. They're on a bye and they're home in 2 weeks against Alabama.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting. All right. Elsewhere to round out the SEC, Arkansas won 41-27 over Auburn, and Mizzou won 23-10 over South Carolina. On the Arkansas front, a really good effort from KJ Jefferson and Raheem Sanders. A really good job by Arkansas going on the road, getting the W. They had 216 of their 286 rushing yards in the second half and just sort of wore Auburn down. They contained Tank Bigsby. Auburn, I thought, put up a decent enough fight late, but Arkansas at that point was just too far out in front. The big news on the Auburn front, actually, is that they're hiring a new AD, that they're poaching away the athletic director from Mississippi State, John Cohen. He's been there the last 7 years. Presumably, this will have some downstream ramifications for one Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin very much on the chopping block here. We'll see what happens. I suspect I know what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn has lost 8 of its last 9 games against SEC opponents.
Yeah, Raheem Sanders and the entire rushing attack seems to be very strong
good
for Arkansas. And Arkansas got stops, got some key stops. The defense has been pretty bad this year, but Auburn is that Alka-Seltzer, that the cure for the common defense, I guess. So
the Alka-Seltzer, okay.
It was a very Sam Pittman win in the way that they laid on him in the second half. Yeah.
And Mizzou jumped out to a big lead. They just sort of cruised to victory over South Carolina. Carolina did not put up much of a fight on offense, maybe a bit hungover, I don't know, after that A&M win. Just 200 yards of offense, 2 turnovers. For Mizzou, the first time they've beaten a ranked opponent in close to 2 years. So
they've gotten close, yeah. And it was Lovett. I apologize for getting the name wrong. I watched this game on mute. Had a receiver pop, which does not always happen. Brady Cook was good. Like it wasn't a high scoring affair, but it was a complete win
effective
for Mizzou. A much needed complete win. Yeah.
Let's close things out with the Pac-12.
Let's.
USC 45, Arizona 37. USC's back, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, they won.
The defense is back, yeah.
Yeah.
The defense is back. They gave up 543 yards to Arizona, but they won.
They won.
They won in Tucson, 45-37. Let me just say this. I said this to you before we went on air, maybe even at the very top. If I could pick one quarterback to be in charge of my NFL team, which very much needs a quarterback in New York.
Yeah.
I think I'd pick Caleb Williams. I know I said Bryce Young last week. I changed my mind.
No, it's okay. You're allowed. Next week it might be CJ Stroud. I'm excited.
Caleb Williams still has some flaws. He's not a finished product. He's very close to a finished product.
Yeah.
He is incredible. Even his flaws were like splitting hairs. Still misses some guys, right? Still does some of the stuff that needs to get better at. But 411 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. They can count on him to make plays whenever they need one.
Mm-hmm.
What they can't count on him to do is play defense. And I think ultimately that will be the undoing for this SC team. They don't have the guys up front. And against a team like Arizona on the road, you can get away with it. But if they eventually end up playing against a team like Oregon, maybe even as they play against a banged-up Utah team in a few weeks, some of that stuff will definitely
Okay, UCLA, they got Zach Charbonnet.
Whose
eyes are getting wide. Yeah.
There are opportunities here, I think, for this SC team to have some issues. So we shall see.
Okay, this game was weird. So no Jordan Addison, no Mario Williams. Caleb Williams, as you're correct in asserting, incredible. Full-on incredible. And in that sort of new school, Johnny Manziel, Patrick Mahomes, Bryce Young kind of, I am athletic enough to buy myself time to find the play I want to make. Works a lot of the time. Now, so they're down to those star receivers, and they still have guys. They still have Taj Washington. They still have Brendan Rice. They have playmakers that they can count on. But there is something about not pulling away from Arizona, the very strange end to the first half. And by very strange, I mean pretty typical for Pac-12 refs at this point, who decided to stand over the ball as after a completion as the seconds ticked off, and it never stopped after the completion. And it's supposed to begin when a ref leaves from covering the ball, and they just allowed the half to end for maybe all the refs had to poop. Is that I don't understand the conceivable reasoning. I'm sure in the moment that they probably apologized to Lincoln Riley, be like, oh yeah, we don't know what happened. Whoops, that's on us.
Lincoln Riley was none too pleased.
No, it was embarrassing, but honestly, the whole game was embarrassingly reffed in terms of PI calls or non-calls, both ways. There was a 4th and 8 stop late in this game, in a one-possession game, I believe, that Arizona would have taken over, and a player, as Caleb Williams is strung out of bounds, an Arizona player gets in his face, and maybe they touched helmets or something like that, but he didn't throw Caleb Williams to the ground. He didn't shove Caleb Williams. They just got in each other's faces, as people do. It was called unsportsmanlike conduct, first down USC. And it's just those moments where you're just like, are we going to let football decide the football game? And I know we have complaints about targeting across the sport and no calls and too many like this game was pathetically called, and it's an all too familiar thing in the Pac-12. And as soon as I saw the crew calling this game, I was like, buddy, this is going to take 4 hours. Things are going to take longer than needed, and none of it is going to make sense. This crew specifically is the worst.
Well,
but
USC will take
Trojans.
the dub.
They won.
They will take the dub. By the way, they already lost to Utah. I think I said they play Utah.
If they play them again, but yes, yeah.
I'm getting my U's mixed up here for the remainder of the regular season. But
all good.
We'll see. Could still get a rematch against the Utes.
Who knows?
Oregon, your Ducks, 42-24 over Cal. Oregon was favored by 17. They won by 18.
Yeah. Cal got some garbage time points. Bo Nix was incredible in this game. He had all the time in the world to sit back and pick apart a Cal defense. The running game was fine for Oregon. A lot of it was just making plays with Bo Nix. The defense completely overwhelmed Cal's offensive line. Cal has some pretty good players on offense, but the actual scheme, the actual ability to adjust is just not at all there for Cal. And 473 people attended this game. So Oregon brought their own juice, as they mentioned on the broadcast. And this game was not anywhere near. I mean, Oregon started slowly, but it was not anywhere near what the final score indicates.
Utah won on Thursday night, 21-17. Bryson Barnes, the sophomore, got the start in place of the injured Cam Rising, who said he told Kyle Whittingham before the game that he didn't think he could go. So Barnes got the start. All things considered, I thought a good effort on the road against the Pac-12's best defense in Wazoo. Wazoo has flaws. Wazoo, I think, will come out of this game feeling like they could have gotten more. But a nice win, I thought, in Pullman for the Utes.
Utah down arguably their best pass catcher, their starting running back and starting quarterback. And still the defense did plenty to win this game for the Utes in limiting Cam Ward, completely basically shutting down the Wazoo rushing attack. A really weird way to play, given all that was left behind. But good win for Utah for sure.
And then to round things out in the Pac-12, UCLA wins by 25 over Stanford. They rush for 324 yards. And Arizona State knocks off Colorado 42-34, Dan.
Yep. All true. I can confirm all of those results.
We also had UCF knocking off Cincinnati in the American. This is a really good game. Mikey Keene came in for UCF and had it working, man. He looked good. He looked very confident throwing the football. 25-21 was your final there. And if we could, Dan, if we could just reach down into the old Patriot League / FCS ranks.
Oh, my God, of course.
Holy Cross, 53. Fordham, 52.
Game of the week of the century of the millennium.
Did not watch this game. Got tweeted many times over about this game as the Crusaders win by 1. Big game.
I watched highlights. I watched clips. It looked incredibly exciting and I guess good for the Crusaders.
How'd our guy Fotis do?
Not a huge factor in this one, but
damn.
There were playmakers all over the field in this one, as far as I could tell. Elsewhere, it was actually a really interesting day. Charlotte fires their coach. They win by 35 or something like that.
Obviously.
They take down Rice, who themselves are having a pretty good year. Toledo beats Eastern Michigan. They needed to come back to do so, but they get to bowl eligibility. We didn't really talk about Florida State, Georgia Tech in the ACC, but a nice sort of neck crack. They needed a win. They got a win. Even when they weren't super consistent on offense, Florida State guys, there it is, were making plays. We sort of glossed over the fact, but UConn is 2 wins away from bowl eligibility after they take down Boston College 13-3 in Jim Mora's first season.
They've got UMass Liberty and Army remaining on their schedule. Got to win 2 of those games.
Not too shabby. App State demolishes Bobby Moe. North Texas with a really impressive win against WKU, 40-13. Good for, I think they have like a 43-year-old quarterback, I want to say.
I believe he's
Texas.
29, yeah. 29 years old.
Yeah. So you were 30 when he was born as well. Boise State, again, continues to roll, has not lost in the Mountain West. It was Colorado State, so that was to be expected. But I think it's Talon Green and George Halani. That backfield has been very good against not great competition. Coastal came out and absolutely laid the lumber against Marshall early on in this game and just sort of cruised to victory. Marshall falls, to 4-4, 1-3 in the Sun Belt, but one of those 4 against your Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Elsewhere, Middle Tennessee. They improved to 4-4, including a win over Miami. They take down UTEP in El Paso, 24-13. Fresno storms back to beat San Diego State, Ty. I thought this was over when I went to bed. They had to score two touchdowns, 15 points, 15 points in the fourth quarter, 32-28. Fresno State gets it done. San Jose State very quietly goes to 5-2. Wyoming, in the middle of the night in Hawaii, takes down the Warriors, 27-20. Dudes, you want to discuss some dudes?
I want to talk Reverbs first, Dan.
Oh, good call.
We got such a great batch of calls on the Reverb line at 408 Verbal 1. So dutifully mixed, cut, sequenced by our guy Shay, who puts his all into this every week. A lot of elbow grease into the Week 9 Reverbs. Appreciate everybody calling. Here's what y'all had to say.
I hate Reverbs.
Dan and Ty, it's Will in Mercersburg, Pennsylvania.
Hi, this is Ed in Austin.
Hello, Dan and Ty. It is your friend, the Count from Sesame Street. Let's count the turnovers Wake Forest had today. 6, 7, 8 turnovers.
Before I go drink myself blind, I just need a in a losing effort, dude alert for Parker Washington.
Whoa, 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 it's a dude alert! JT Tuimoloau single-handedly saving me from stabbing my eyes out with Q-tips. Go Buckeyes!
Pennsylvania, another turn of a chocolate bar.
If I had a nickel for every time that some dude named JT from Ohio State owned Penn State in the fourth quarter, I'd have 2 nickels. You know, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
But I am currently inside riding a bike instead of outside because I love the Iowa Hawkeyes. What is wrong with me, and why is this sport so beautiful?
A group of cowboys hasn't been whipped that bad since the Earth Vendetta ride. I want 2 things from you. A dude alert for my boy Wild Bill Howard, and can you also please drop that big stanky pulsing guess who just got murdered?
I turn 41 tomorrow, which is a full touchdown less than the 48 points that Oklahoma State just gave up. I figure I should say it one last time. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, Dan and Ty, it's Connor, the guy who writes those Solid Slate articles for your website. Yeah, wow, I really missed on the window of opportunity today. Please don't fire me. What in the hell are we doing with Spencer Rattler? This guy coming in thinks he's supposed to be a Heisman-winning contending quarterback, and what he comes out here and he doesn't even know how to throw the. I'm about to use some language my wife will not approve of.
I think if I have to listen to another media member talk about how Will Levis is a first-round draft pick, I might have to stop watching football for a while.
Please consult the time of possession chart between Minnesota and Rutgers if you want to understand what it feels like to have somebody sit on you and slowly thrust their body weight on you until you lose consciousness.
Tried a new recipe tonight, crock-potted Spartan. It was a little spicy, but pretty good. Still prefer it flash fried. Go Blue.
Our long national nightmare is over. Texas A&M finally broke the 25-point mark. Yay.
Holy Cross won an OT to stay undefeated, and BC lost to UConn. It's a great day to be a Crusader. The Cross is back, baby. Let's go.
In the same week that mediocre quarterback Matt Ryan was benched, Jeff happily took his mediocre group of Eagles and their student body full of mediocre New England prep school students with garbage country club membership to Hartford, Connecticut. And he may not be sexier than that, but he sure knows how to win. And Sid Elmore Jr. and his lucky stick down the Green Eagles, the wings are clipped.
UConn! UConn! Woo!
Yes, sir.
That was great. That was great. An excitable batch of reverbs here in week 9. Thanks again to Shay for putting all of those together. I think we hit on a lot of those points. We hit on the possession in the Minnesota game. We obviously hit on the drive to 25 for Texas A&M. So it's always good to see that we are speaking to the heart, to the pulse of college football out there on Twitter, out there in the Verballerhood as well. Thank you to everyone for dialing in. Don't forget, if you are listening to this show, if you made it this far, if you want to come see us live, we are excited about the live show that we're going to do in about a month's time in Atlanta at Terminal West on Friday, December the 2nd, Dan.
Yes.
It's going to be a fun show. SolidVerbalLive.com.
SolidVerbalLive.com, SmellTiesHair.com, if that's easier to remember. Can we get to some dudes real quick? I asked for dudes, and people were like, Will Howard. Quinshawn Judkins, Zach Charbonnet, obviously all these guys in the year of the running back, Raheem Sanders for Arkansas, Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, JT Tuimoloau, definitely. Michigan's dynamic offensive duo of Blake Corum and Jake Moody, for sure. Michigan State's Keon Coleman, I think, has that offering as well. Bo Nix for Oregon was sensational. Caleb Williams, as you mentioned, was very, very good. Zach Charbonnet, did I say him already? I probably did. Rashee Rice for SMU goes for $180. Richard Reese, who I just constantly confuse Rashee Rice with, for Baylor. Reese's Pieces, of course. Jordan Travis for Florida State was kind of incredible, and I love to see that he keeps doing that. Drake May for North Carolina is probably going to need to be retired already as a freshman, as a dude. Otherwise, I'm sure I'm missing a ton of guys, but that's who stood out to me. Parker Washington for Penn State, certainly in that conversation as a dude. Oh, I didn't mention this. How about Brock Bowers and that ridiculous juggling catch?
So
like
good.
Brock Bowers is kind of a retired dude at this point, but like that was a dude catch. The bobbling and spinning and rumbling, stumbling for 71 yards. That was ridiculous.
Dudes for week 9. Thank you to everybody for downloading, for supporting the show.
Yes.
Courtesy of our good friends over at Apple, we have a special bit of bonus content that we are excited to offer. We are going to continue recording after we hit stop on this here normal podcast, and we're going to give you something a little bit more raw.
What?
We call it the post-game tailgate.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's you and I reacting to one particular or one grouping of topics around the world of college football. This time around, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan. Just the Big Ten, some raw reaction to what's going on out there in the world of college football. Go on out to our page on Apple Podcasts for more if you are interested in subscribing to our premium content.
I think if you say raw one more time, we might be fined by the FCC.
Raw.
Even though they don't govern us, I think we might still get fined. Okay, fair enough.
We'll link it up if you were ever so inclined. Check out the post-game tailgate.
Yes.
That's all we got for this college football week 9, officially in the books. Our next episode will be on Wednesday. We are going to react to the first batch of college football playoff rankings. We hope you will be there to join us to react alongside us. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hillenbrand, thanks again for downloading, listening, playing along at home, for all your support. Stay solid.
Peace.